right, let's talk about fractions. The topics we're going to talk about today is first a bunch of definitions, then we're going to talk about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing fractions. That's going to be the bulk of the video today. Then we're going to talk about comparing fractions and mixed numbers. So the definitions, first off, numerator is the number or numbers on the top of the fraction. Denominators are numbers on the bottom of the fraction. An improper fraction is when the numerator is greater than the denominator, so the value is greater than 1. And finally, the reciprocal of a fraction is when you flip the numerator and denominator to make a new fraction. So as a picture for that one, 3/5 and 5/3 are reciprocals of each other, because you can see you just flip them. So the first step when working with fractions, we're going to simplify and reduce them to something that's easy to work with. Then solve the problem by doing the math. And then when you get your final answer after doing the math, look at the answers, and if you don't see your answer, then you either need to simplify and reduce more, or what you did was just wrong and you need to check your math. So you'll always do steps 1 and 2. You may or may not do the third step here. So step 1, simplifying and reducing fractions. This is where we are rewriting the numbers or terms to a more basic or concise form. Makes it easier to understand, and the answers on the test will almost always be in the most simplified form. So let's simplify these 3 fractions to be their most simplified form without a calculator. These are easy, medium, and hard. To learn the best, pause the video and do this yourself. I recommend this for all my practice questions, but don't wait for me to solve it and think, oh, that makes sense. It's so much different watching someone else doing it versus you yourself doing it. And you want to make sure that you can do all the things that we're teaching. So pause the video and figure it out. First off, 3/6. Divide the top and the bottom by 3, and we get 1/2, 1/2. So this was obviously the easy example. This one is a little bit trickier because our brains want to simplify it to make the top number 1, but that's not always possible. So let's divide the top and bottom by a common multiple. The multiple I always like using, because it's very simple to do, is I notice both the top and bottom numbers are even. Let's divide by 2. And that gives us 2/19. And we can't simplify that anymore, so the answer is 2/19. All right, let's start multiplying fractions. How to multiply fractions. So this is the easiest operation to do with fractions, so that's why we're going to start with it. You just multiply across. So you look at the numerator of the first one, look at the numerator of the second one, multiply across. Look at the denominator of the first one, the denominator of the second one, and multiply across. So you can see on that example here, I have a over b times c over d equals ac over bd. So I hope you can see we're just multiplying right across the top to get ac, multiplying right across the bottom to get bd. Now, as a reminder, when you see 2 numbers or equations in parentheses, like how I put them here, all it's saying is multiply them together. You probably know that, you probably remember that, but we haven't talked about it yet, so that's what that is. So here's our first practice problem. Pause the video, solve it yourself. So the first thing that we do is check if anything can be simplified. 1/3 and 2/5 is already simplified all the way down, so there's no simplifying needed. Next, we multiply across the top. 1 times 2 is 2. So then we multiply across the bottom. 3 times 5 is 15. So our final answer is 2/15. Can that be simplified? No. So that's it. Here's the next one. Pause it again and I'll let you do it. So what's the first thing we do? Check to simplify. 3/5 and 5/7 are already simplified individually, so that's good. But let's introduce a new way to simplify when you're multiplying. When you're multiplying like this, you can look diagonally to see if you can simplify those numbers. So for example, let's see if you can see my laser pointer here. So this 5 on the 3/5 and this 5 on the 5/7 are diagonal from each other, and they can both be divided by 5 to become 1. So that's what we do. Look at that, much easier to work with. Now we have 3/1 times 1/7, and now we just multiply across, and you get 3/7. Now, if you didn't notice that you could have simplified those 5s, can you still solve it without simplifying? Of course you can. Let's do it that way just to show that it's the same thing. So 3/5 times 5/7, same starting equation. If we just multiply across, we see 15/35. Then we need to simplify. Then when we simplify, dividing the top and bottom by 5, we get 3/7. So either way, you'll still get the same answer. It's just easier on the math side. You're more likely to screw up a 5 times 7 than you are going to be to screw up a 1 times 7. So it's easier to simplify at the beginning if you can notice it. If you don't notice it, there's no reason to stress about it. It can save you a little bit of time though if you simplify at the beginning, so it's worth looking for it. Next one, dividing fractions. So let's talk about how to divide fractions. It's just like multiplying the fractions, but with one extra step. You flip the second fraction. That's it. And then you multiply across following all the same rules as you would with regular multiplication. So if you look at these letters here, a over b divided by c over d, that is equal to a over b times d over c. So using the definition we learned earlier, reciprocal. We took the reciprocal of c over d. We flipped it to make it d over c. And now we multiply across. So let's look at some practice problems for that. 15 over 3 divided by 3 over 9. Pause the video and solve it. The first thing that we do is flip the second number. So now we have 15 over 3 times 9 over 3. There are so many ways that you could simplify these, so I'll just pick the one that we just learned. So first, I see 15 over 3. So first I see this 15 in the 15 over 3, and this 3, 9 over 3, can both be divided by 3. And that will give us 5 over 3 times 9 over 1. Already way easier to solve, but let's simplify it more. I see this 9 and the 9 over 1 and this 5 over 3 can also be divided by 3. So now we have 5 over 1 times 3 over 1, which is just multiplying across 15 over 1, which is 15. And that's all that dividing fractions requires. You need to remember to flip that second fraction and multiply across instead. Easy peasy. Well, this is where it starts to get a little bit more tricky because there's more required. Let's talk about it. Adding fractions. So in the same format we had before, a over b plus c over d, you cannot add those until you follow the number one rule. That number one rule is the denominator, bottom number, of all fractions being added need to match before you can add them together. AKA they need a common denominator. So b and d need to be equal. Now let's talk about how to do that. To get a over b and c over d to have the same bottom number, the same denominator, we need to take the first fraction and multiply the numerator and denominator by d, the denominator of the second fraction. And we need to take the second fraction's numerator and denominator and multiply both of those by b, the denominator of the first fraction. So you have a over b here, and we multiplied d to this whole thing. So you see a d over b d, multiplied by d. Then you take the second fraction, c over d, right here, c over d, and I multiplied the top and bottom by the denominator of the first side, b. So now the denominator, you can see, has a b and a d, and this one, same thing, a b and a d. So we have what we just talked about, a over b plus c over d becomes a times d over b times d plus b times c over b times d. Then the way that we add these is we combine the bottom together, not add them, it just becomes one, b, d. The top numbers you just add across. So you have whatever the AD number is plus whatever the BC number is. So let's do a practice question, see if you can figure it out, and maybe this will make it a little bit easier. If you feel like you understand it, pause it right now and test yourself. Otherwise, follow along with me. Let's go. So first off, I want to note that we cannot simplify diagonally anymore. That is only allowed with multiplying. The way we solve this, using what we just learned, is to make the denominators equal. So let's first multiply the 2/3 by 8 over 8, and multiply the second number, 3/8, by 3 over 3. And now we can solve this without a calculator, because that's going to waste your time. Now we're simplifying these numbers down to 2 times 8, which is 16, 3 times 8, which is 24, 3 times 3, which is 9, and 8 times 3, which is 24 again. So now all of a sudden our denominators are both 24, so we can work with that. Now we just have to add across. There's the numbers that we just said. So now adding across, we have the 16 plus 9 all over 24. Then just simplify the top, do the math, I should say, and that becomes 25 over 24. My head's kind of blocking that 24, and that's our answer. So let's talk about an alternate solution, or another way that we can solve addition problems. Sometimes you can multiply only one of the two fractions being added together to make them have the common denominator. This can be a little bit faster, save you a lot of time, but not always possible. So, for example, 3 over 9 plus 4 over 18. You may notice that 9 can just be multiplied by 2 to get 18. So instead of doing everything we just talked about of multiplying 3 over 9 by 18 over 18 and 4 over 18 by 9 over 9, and then simplifying and doing all that math, instead you could just multiply the first number by 2 over 2. And then you have the common denominator of 18, like this. So now you have 6 over 18 plus 4 over 18, and you add across 10 over 18. Much easier than going through all those other steps and having to do math on bigger numbers. So look out for the times that you may be able to solve it this way, and it'll save you some time. And also notice on this slide, we got to simplify. 10 over 18 is not actually the final answer because it can be simplified down, divide each number by 2 to get 5/9. Subtracting fractions. It's the same rules as adding fractions. You get a common denominator first, and then you subtract the numbers across the top and keep the common denominator. So let's do a practice problem for subtracting. I won't walk through this one step by step because it's the same process as adding the fractions that we just did. So I'll just have the full solution on the next slide. So if you want to practice, do it now because I'm about to give you the answer. All right, here's all the steps. So what we should have done is multiplied the first number by 8 over 8, the second number by 3 over 3. That gives us 32 over 24 minus 15 over 24. And then you keep the bottom number, 24. The top number you just subtract across, 32 minus 15, 17. It's probably worth noting, you don't need to be writing all this down on a paper during the test. If you need to show your work, great, do it, not a problem. But if you can do it in your head, then just do it in your head. That can probably save you a little bit of time so you don't have to write everything down. You can just think it through and keep moving. But you got to make sure that you're confident in what you're doing so you don't screw something up. And as a reminder, this test is partially about knowing the math, but really it's about can you do it quickly, can you just keep going. So it's a situation of good, better, best, where the good practice would be to use the calculator. Don't do this, please. The better practice would be writing down the math on the paper. And the best practice, which would be saving you the most time, would be doing it all in your head. So on test day, you absolutely need to write things down, and that's totally fine. You'll probably need to use the calculator once or twice, but whenever you can do it in your head, just do it in your head, keep moving. Much easier. All right, you've almost made it through the video. Only a couple more slides. Mixed numbers. There are rarely test questions on this, but this notation may appear on 1 or 2 answers, so you should know that 4 and 3/4 is just 4 plus 3/4, or 4.75. 5 and 3/8 is just 5 plus 3 over 18. 12 and 137 over 155 is just 12 plus 137 over 55. I hope that makes sense. Converting mixed numbers to fractions you may need to do, and all we do here is you multiply the first number, the 4, by the denominator, which is 16, over 4. So you have that 4, which is really 16/4, right? That's how you got 4. And then you add it to the 3/4 that's remaining in the fraction. So you get 19 over 4. That's an improper fraction, by the way. Comparing fractions. Sometimes the DAT test creators will have questions that require you to compare various numbers and organize them least to greatest, or say which of these is the smallest, etc. This is the one question that I actually allow calculator use on. I give a pass for these questions because it's usually fastest to just type in the fractions and write down what the value is on your paper, then organize them however the question asks. So, comparing fractions. Option 1, math. Make the fractions have the same denominator, just like the adding, subtracting fractions, and then compare. Option 2, calculator. Type the numbers in the calculator, write them down on your paper, and then organize as needed. Like I said earlier, this one I actually like option 2 better, but I will say one thing. Only use the calculator on the ones that aren't obvious to you. Like, don't type in 4 over 10 into the calculator. You know it's 0.4. Don't waste your precious time on basic math that you either memorized or can solve in your head immediately. All right, last practice problem. Let's pause the video for this one and get it done. 3, 2, 1, let's go. All right, organize these numbers from least to greatest. 3/5, 0.71, 21 over 20, 2 and 2/9, 13 over 19, and 5/8. So here's how I would do it. I instantly know that 3/5 is 0.6, so I'd write that down. Then 0.71, I would just write that down. 21 over 20, I would just say is a little bit more than 1, and so I'd probably just write down 1.1 to signify that. 2 and 2/9 is a little more than 2, so I'd probably just write 2.1. Then I'd put 13 over 19 in the calculator to find out that 13 over 19 equals 0.684, and write that one down. And then finally, I'd put 5/8 in the calculator and see that that one is 0.625. That's just how I would have done it. Maybe you needed to use the calculator a little bit more. Maybe you had 5/8 memorized, but that's how I would have found the numbers. Now it asks us to organize them from least to greatest. And so I would now organize them 3/5, 5/8, 13 over 20, 0.71, 21 over 20, 2 and 2/9. All right, here's your summary slide, and that's all I got for you. So happy studying. I'll see you in the next one.